and welcome to the last of our dog talks, where we're going to talk a little bit about the Yukon Quest, what the Yukon Quest actually is, and how excited we all are to be part of that Yukon Quest. So, yeah, my name is Fabian Schmitz. I'm the operations manager for the Yukon Quest here on the Yukon side, in our White House office. And yeah, I'm going to run you through this next hour, I guess, show you a few photos, tell you a little bit of what's happening with the Yukon Quest, and show you some videos. And maybe you've seen it already. We have some dogs here today as well, so maybe at the end you have the chance to meet them and talk a little bit about these dogs. I'm not really a great computer geek, so I wasn't able to set up the presentation that I can hold them from the front, so I have to speak to you from behind, but the interesting stuff is up there on the screen. So, yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my history with the Yukon Quest. And my girlfriend Claudia, she's over here with the dogs, dealing with these 3 power machines at the moment. She studied biology in Germany and thought it would be a great idea to go to Fairbanks in Alaska to write her thesis, and that was in 05-06, the winter of 05-06. We had a very nice and cozy life in Germany, and then she thought Alaska would be a great idea. So we went over there and spent some time, and then we heard about this event called the Yukon Quest, and we had a chance to see the start in Fairbanks in 2006. And so that, we totally remembered these images of these racing dogs going through the start chute, and that was just spectacular. And we thought we want to do that as well. We want to go and run dogs, and why not getting paid for something that is so much fun? So we thought we tried to become dog sled guides for tours, and we found a job in British Columbia for the winter of 07-08, and so that's when we got really involved with sled dogs. And we also decided then to stay in Canada. We came from Germany over just for a year to work with sled dogs and do some canoeing up here, and then we liked it so much that we decided to stay. And in 2008 we started to become volunteers for the Yukon Quest. And a good friend of ours, Wendy Morrison, she was the operations manager in that year. And she brought us in to make trail markers. I'm going to show you later how that works, making trail markers for the race. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So we got deeper and deeper into the race, and then we met Hans Gatt, who was a 4-time Yukon Quest champion. And he actually became our landlord, and we became his handlers. So we worked for Hans during the race, and taking care of his dogs in the checkpoint or the Dawson checkpoint. And then at the same time we acquired our first own dogs. And in 2011 I was able to run the Yukon Quest 300, which is the short version of the Yukon Quest. And yeah, you'll meet some of the dogs later that were in my team for the Yukon Quest 300. In 2012 I was a volunteer again, and then in 2013 I thought it would be a great idea to sign up for the Yukon Quest again for the Yukon Quest 300 and run the race. And while I was filling out the application to run as a musher, they told me about the job that they had in the office, and instead of running the race again, I became the operations manager, and that's where I'm now. So before we continue with talking about the race, I would like to show you some images or some videos actually. And there's a video that got produced in 2012.
It's only under a matter of seconds.
Gives me the chills every time I see those pictures. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, just to give you a little bit of an image to what the Yukon Quest actually is, I wanted to show you this little video. And so how did the Yukon Quest actually start? There is another huge 1,000-mile race, the Iditarod. You've probably heard of the Iditarod if you're a little bit interested in dog sledding, which is a 1,000-mile race from Anchorage to Nome. And it follows partly the old route that was taken on the Serum Run, and they brought the vaccines up to Nome. And so not everybody was happy with the Iditarod, and there was a bunch of people, oh yeah? There was a bunch of people in the mushing community who thought, we can do a different race. We want to have something different, something that is not the Iditarod. And that was and these people started talking about that like end of 70s, beginning of the 80s. And there was a group, those four guys here, Roger Williams, Leroy Schenk, Ron Rossa, and William Lips, and they sat in a bar in a saloon in Fairbanks, and I'm pretty sure there was a lot of beer consumption involved when they came up with the idea to have a different 1,000-mile race. And that could be international, could include Canada and Alaska, and it should follow historic routes, mainly the Yukon River, and they wanted to follow old trading routes and the routes the prospectors took when they ventured into the interior of the Yukon and then eventually ventured on to Alaska and for gold mining. And their dream became true in 1984, and that was when the first Yukon Quest, so that was 30 years ago, when the first Yukon Quest ran. And the first champion is actually still active as a musher. I have a photo here of Sonny Lindner in '84, how he came in. And there was very little snow that year, obviously. A pretty warm winter down here. And that's how he comes in here to Whitehorse. Maybe you recognize the old tracks there, and on the other side of the riverbank. So that's his team coming in after the 12 days. It took him 12 days to accomplish this route. And in the first years, it was not so much a packed trail. It was more like, here's Fairbanks, there's Whitehorse, have a good trip. And so it was real winter survival, and they totally depended on these dog teams. So he was the first one to come in. And the trail that they established for the Yukon Quest, down in the right corner, you see that black marker, is Whitehorse down here. Hard to see on this map. Whitehorse is down here. Rayburn up here, Carmex, Pelly Crossing, Dawson City up here. It continues to Eagle, Circle, Central, and then to Fairbanks in Alaska. So this is a pretty brutal 1,000-mile trail. And I'll show you the profile, how, like on the bottom you can see profile how the altitude that the people have to climb over. So on the right hand side you see Whitehorse, and it's fairly flat for quite a while until about Pelly Crossing. And then King Solomon's Dome is a pretty big chunk just before Dawson City. But they use old mining roads. And it's not super steep there, it's just extremely long to climb over. And then the next big one is American Summit, which is extremely wind exposed. So when the teams leave Dawson City and travel to Eagle, they travel down the Yukon River to 40 Mile. It's an old little mining town. And then they turn onto the 40 Mile River and eventually climb over that American Summit. And then a little bit further to the left, you'll see Eagle Summit and Rosebud Summit. And that is something everybody is afraid of. I'll show you pictures later of Eagle Summit. And when people say the Yukon Quest is the toughest sled dog race in the world, and that is because there is this Eagle Summit and Rosebud Summit, which is extremely steep. And much is debate if it's better to run the race from Whitehorse to Fairbanks, which we do in uneven in odd years, and in even years we run from Fairbanks to Whitehorse. But they don't really come to a conclusion, because it's either you go extremely steep up, or you basically fall in that hole going down. So they don't really know what's better, and I guess that changes by the year. Okay, so from 30 years ago to today, the Yukon Quest probably has changed a lot. I'm only with the Yukon Quest for a few years now, but today it's an international association, the Yukon Quest International Association, which is actually two organizations. We have an organization here in the Yukon, and we have the same association on the Alaska side. It's an NGO, a non-profit organization, and it's run by a board of directors, and basically two board of directors, and they form a joint board. And then, of course, there's a lot of committees, like for financing, for a committee that takes care of the rules. We have a logistics committee, and we have a canine care committee, a group of people who want to ensure that we have really good care for the dogs on the trail. And then there's staff, like our executive director, her name is Marie, and myself as operations manager on this side. And we have a whole bunch of different contractors, like the race marshal, race judges, race directors, or race managers, and we have head veterinarian as a contractor. And I'm going to show you some pictures who all these people are later, and what they do during the race. And all these people try to accomplish a race, of course. And a big chunk is fundraising. So we have about $1 million budget for this race, joint for the Alaska side and the Yukon side. And all that money comes from sponsors, donations. We try to organize raffles, and don't leave before you bought a raffle ticket from me today. Silent auctions. We have Bev here. She's on our board of directors. She's sitting back here. She's putting a lot of effort into organizing raffles and silent auctions for us, which is awesome. And we have a lot of fundraising events, of course, throughout the year. And, And then a few months before the race, we all start to go into the planning in these committees, trying to get all these people into the right place at the right time, which is a huge logistic event, which you probably could imagine. And so one of the things I talked about trail marker production earlier, this is part of these things that we do. And we need 5,000 trail markers on each side. So 5,000 for the Yukon side and 5,000 of these trail markers for the Alaskan side. And all of them have to be painted. There's a reflective tape that gets stapled on, and that takes a lot of time. And there's a few ladies back here who helped us last winter to accomplish that. So pretty awesome. Another huge piece of work is breaking the trail. And a lot of it is on the river, and you can't just build a trail in one year and then hope it's there the next year, because it always changes. And maybe you can see that a little bit on the top. It looks pretty rough there. That's actually a river. It's the jumbled ice on a frozen river. So the river froze over, broke open again. All these chunks of ice got mashed together and then froze together. And it's really hard work. You see a guy on the bottom of that picture with a pick there, and he's actually picking the trail into kilometers and miles of trail to make a good dog trail. The top right photo shows overflow. Especially on the river, the conditions change constantly, and you have water that's seeping through the ice on top of the ice, and then you have like liquid water. It can be -40 sometimes, and you have liquid water on top of ice, which makes it really hard to run the dogs through. And you see some down trees on the bottom there. And we're really lucky on the Yukon side. We have the Canadian Rangers who do the trail every year. They run an exercise from here to the Canadian-Alaskan border. And this exercise happened to be on our trail. And they did it about 4 times in a row to make sure that we had a good trail. And thanks to them, we have a really good trail on the Yukon side. On the Alaska side, it's quite different. They have a bunch of volunteers who do that. And you have to imagine those guys are out there, no matter what the conditions are, they have to build a trail. And last year, several people got injured while doing that. Several snowmobiles broke down and got wrecked in these cold temperatures. So it's an amazing accomplishment, and logistically an amazing accomplishment for the organization to establish this trail every year to make this race possible. And then we have those weeks just before the race, and there's a whole bunch of public events, and we have a bunch of events for the mushers. Events like Meet the Mushers, Quest Fest, a banquet, and we have the food drop for the mushers, where they all come together and give us their food that they want to send down the trail for the dogs, and all their supplies that they need to take care of the dogs. We have meetings where they get informed about the trail conditions and all that kind of stuff. And a very big, important part is the vet check that you see down there at the bottom, where all the dogs get completely checked through and get a full medical exam before they enter the race. Okay, so I was talking about the public events and like Meet the Mushers. Here you see some pictures. On the top right, Crispin Studer is signing posters for some of his fans. On the bottom, you see the Star Banquet there. And I was talking about the events for the mushers that we have with pre-race. And this is food drop. This is where all the food drop bags get brought down to the Yukon Quest, and then we have to deliver all these supplies to all the checkpoints that are on the trail. And we have about every race here, we have about 1,000 of these bags with food, dog gear, and all that kind of stuff that we have to distribute. And some of the locations, I'll show you later some pictures of the checkpoints for the Yukon Quest. Some of the locations are so remote that we have to fly it in, which is a massive undertaking to get all the stuff to where it actually belongs for the race. And then all this eventually evolved into the start day, which is an amazing day. And I would like to show you another video that was shot in 2012.
Protectors
So what happens after they leave the start chute? So they run down the trail, which is apparently 1,000 miles long, and we do have 11 checkpoints, which are spread out all over the map along this trail. And in these checkpoints, the mushers are able to get water. These food drop bags that you saw before, those blue bags, are shipped to these checkpoints so they can access their dog food that is laying in the checkpoints. And very important, they have the vets in these checkpoints, so the vets can look after their dogs, checking through. And then here you can see that map again and all the checkpoints that we have. Rayburn Comics, Pelly, Dawson, Eagle, Circle City, Central, Two Rivers, and then Fairbanks at the end. And on the way, there's a few other spots that we call dog drops. So McCabe Creek, Scroggy Creek, and Slavens are dog drops. It's not a checkpoint where you can ship anything to, but people can drop any injured dogs. So there's a vet there, there's a race judge, and they can get some help if they need. And in these checkpoints, this is where we see all the volunteers. And we have about 1,000 volunteers for this 1,000-mile race. So it's about a volunteer per mile, roughly. And but they all sit in the checkpoints. And on the top left, you'll see Kelly Griffin is the musher, and Judy Momon is one of our volunteers. And she's checking this musher in. So the musher comes in, they note the time, and then they check for all the mandatory gear. A musher needs to bring certain equipment on the trail, like snowshoes, an axe, enough dog food, a cooker to cook this dog food. And then once they have that done, on the bottom right, she's putting him into, or in this case Kelly Griffin, she gets noted onto our charts, and then she's phoning all these informations through to the headquarters in Alaska, so that they always know which musher is where, and what is the time coming in, the time going out, and all that kind of stuff. And once a musher came in, or comes into the checkpoint, the vets are available to check on the dogs. And on the top left, you see Kathleen McGill. She's our head vet for the Yukon Quest for a few years now. And on the bottom, you see some of the vets in her team. There's roughly, I think it's roughly 15 vets that are on the trail. Usually they have a vet assistant as well, and some vet students are coming every year so that they can learn a little bit from this experience. And then those folks check the dogs pretty thoroughly on the trail again. So all the exam that gets done pre-race gets repeated in the checkpoints in the race to ensure that the dogs are healthy and in good conditions to continue the race. And it's very interesting, if you ever have the chance to visit the Yukon Quest and to go into these checkpoints, it's extremely interesting to watch the mushers and their different strategies on how they perform their checkpoint routine. And you can really see the difference between a rookie musher, so somebody who has never done it before, and a musher who is, whatever, 4 times champion and knows every single movement is planned and prepared. And on the top left, you see Saul Turner. He tried to run the race and follow his dad's footsteps. Frank Turner, maybe you've heard of him, one of the legends in the Yukon Quest. It didn't work out for him because of a massive storm on Eagle Summit, so they all had to get rescued by a helicopter up there, and he wasn't able to continue the race. And you can totally see, like, he has a stack of dog bowls sitting there, and he's filling them individually. That is a very rookie mistake, and you would see an experienced musher would hand them out in like one run down the line, all the bowls on the ground. On the run back, he has the cooler and scoops up the food, and the whole task takes him maybe a minute. So it's really interesting to see the different ideas of dog care and strategies, how mushers do this stuff in checkpoints. And then eventually the biggest, most important thing in a checkpoint is what you see on the right, on the bottom, and that is the dogs need to rest. It's very important that they get good sleep, that they can regenerate and fuel up for the next stretch of the race. So that is obviously a very happy dog down there, covered with straw. And all this happens under supervision of this guy. His name is Doug Grillo. He's the race marshal. And he has a whole team of race judges that help him. So the race spreads out quite a bit. Sometimes there's multiple days between the front runners and the runners at the back of the pack in the Yukon Quest. So he and his team, they try to ensure that in every checkpoint where a musher comes in is a race judge to make sure that the rules are followed properly and everybody gets good dog care. And then halfway point is Dawson City. And this is what you can find in Dawson City in the dog yard. In Dawson City, it's allowed for the mushers to build like an improvised camp, so they usually, most mushers put up a tarp like this. They can't have the dogs in an enclosed area, but they can put a tarp over them, and then they get a lot of straw, and they have to stay in Dawson for 36 hours to make sure that the dogs are rested well, and that, again, the vets were able to check on every single dog in that race again. Dawson City is usually the place where we also do urine samples for doping to make sure that there's no doping involved in the sport. And it's a very great place to be. If you ever want to follow the Yukon Quest, Dawson City is awesome. It's a lot of fun because that is where everything calms down. You know, the mushers are racing. They just covered 500 miles through rough terrain. They're happy that they can sleep now for 36 hours, get a shower and all that stuff. And it's very nice, actually. And then going to Fairbanks, one of the next important spots is Slavens Roadhouse, and I put that in as an example for an extremely remote location on the Yukon Quest. You can only fly in. It's in the Yukon and Charlie River Wildlife Preserve, I think is the correct name. And the Park Service runs this dog drop. It's not really a checkpoint because they can't access any additional equipment, but they can leave a dog there if they have a sick dog on the trail or something like that. And it's a beautiful place. I've never been there in the winter, but I've paddled there on the Yukon in the summertime, and it's really worth a trip to go and see this whole area in Slavens Roadhouse. And then I was talking about Eagle Summit earlier, and it's extremely steep terrain. So the photo on the left is, the camera is looking up. It's not like, you know, held horizontally or something with the lens. It's extremely steep. Maybe you can see it a little bit and judge it a little bit by the wheel dog's legs, how they are pushing into that hill to get up there. And the photo was taken by Jerry Willomitzer, one of the mushers who ran the Yukon Quest in previous years, and he took that photo on the left. And on the right is not only a great photo for Eagle Summit. They're almost at the top there. That's where it's getting flatter again. I find this is a great photo for the courage and the sportsmanship in this race. And the guy in the back is William Clean. I'm going to talk about William Clean later a little bit. He lost one of his legs in an accident years and years ago, and so he just had a prosthesis, or like one of these artificial legs, and he ran the Yukon Quest many times, and was an extremely good racer. I think his best finish was second place. And he had a really hard time in that year to get over Eagle Summit. So another musher, Brand Sass, came by, and he rescues people pretty much every year in a race. And he took the line in front of the Williams lead dogs and pulled Williams' dog team up the hill, because William wasn't able to do it all by himself with that leg. So those two guys managed to climb over that immense mountain, Eagle Summit, together. And then eventually they all make it, hopefully most of them, to the finish line in Fairbanks. And I would like to show you that video as well. Actually, I have a video of the finish in Whitehorse, and that was the 2012 finish, which was one of the most spectacular finishes ever, because the first and second place were only 26 seconds apart after 1,000 miles.
Arkansas, close basically to the southern rednecks. I grew up in Chicago. Out here playing in the north with our dog teams, and I'm doing like my all right, and he's doing his war whoop. And we literally been going at it for, I don't know, 5-6 miles. I sort of screwed up. I was in the dark for most of the run on the river here, and then I thought it'd be the gentleman let him know I got to sleep right on his back. So I actually turned my light on about an eighth of a mile away, just let him know I was coming, and I shouldn't have done that because that's what he took off on me. So it took me another 5 miles to catch him, and then I had a bag of Gringo, John Baker dog I got this year. So Gringo's a big boy, he's a bigger dog, and so I had to pack him the last 5 miles in. And sometimes, though, when you pack a dog, you actually go faster. So this is one of those times I got lucky. But yeah, it was, even if I came on second, I was having fun out there, and I was a buddy of mine, and I respect the world for him, and he won this race just as much as I did.
Tell us what the captain do.
I go around, I talk to 50 schools a year, talking about literacy, promoting reading and your dreams, and I guess I'm living that.
How does it feel to be a champ?
I don't know. It's a word that we're taught. We're all want to win and all that. For me, that's not really what first is as a champion. It's what you do is what you do all your life, and hopefully I can use this to do even more for kids and other folks because I love to do good things. Basically, that trail is my training trail for when I was living out in Eddie Lake in Tampa. So I've been in the trail quite a bit. I know every inch of that trail, and every hill, if I was going up even a couple centimeters in elevation, I would be running.
Do you have any dogs that stood out on this run?
Big Walter up there with the camera. He's 7 years old, and everybody talks about Silver and Brent's famous dog, but I've always known there's only one Walter. He's the man. This team, they did good in the quest, and I'm good buddies with Lance, and I'm going for Iditarod next, so I just can't get on. I mean, Iditarod's all famous and all that, but we all around here, we know we love the quest because the quest is all about the spirit of not only the North, but about the history of the North. And whenever I'm out on that trail, I just think about all the amazing people that have been out on these trails, and it gives me motivation.
Now that you're in Whitehorse, what's the first thing you're going to do to celebrate?
Make my friend Corbin on give me a beer. Load up the dogs, we gotta take care of them, feed them up, but I don't have time to sleep here. To tell you the truth, this is my 20,000 mile race, and I've never won any race at all in my life. So this is the first one. So to do it here, it's a pretty special feeling. And, especially around all you guys.
With the start day brings tears to your eyes, the finish makes you cry like a little baby. Yeah, I thought I'll talk a little bit, not too long, about some of these crazy people actually doing that kind of race. And I picked 4 mushers that I wanted to talk about real briefly. And the guy on the top left is a 4 times champion. His name is Hans Gatt. He ran the Yukon Quest many, many times. He wasn't that lucky in the last few trials, but an amazing athlete. He came from Austria over to, I think it was about 20 years ago. He was a dairy farmer actually in Austria, and then he went to one of the little dog mushing races in the Alps, and he looked at that and he was like, oh, this is something interesting. He got some dogs, and then in no time he gave up all the cows over there, came over to Canada, and decided to become a professional dog racer. And he was the guy that we handled for in 3 races, which was an amazing experience to see his knowledge in dog care. That was just, I learned a whole lot from him, so that was quite interesting. The guy in the top right, that was William Clean. I said that he lost his leg. Said that already. I think it was a traffic accident or so. And so with this artificial leg of his, he ran the Yukon Quest many, many times and was a main competitor in the race and in some other races as well. yeah, an amazing sportsman. He retired from dog mushing some years ago, and they always say, "Oh, this is my last race, and I'll never come back." And then he actually got rid of all his dogs, like he gave them away and sold some of his dogs, and he really had no dogs anymore. And there's a little bit of talk now that he's coming back, so they never really fully retired, I guess. So we'll see if he ever runs the Yukon Quest again. The guy on the right on the bottom is probably the most known dog musher in the world at this time. His name is Lance Mackey, and he won the Yukon Quest 4 times as well, and he won the Iditarod many times. And some people say he's the best dog musher in this world, but last few years he wasn't that as successful again. His story is quite amazing. He wrote a book about himself, and he battled cancer and survived cancer with some pretty heavy damages to his body, and his kennel is called Lance, or Mackey's Comeback Kennel, so because it was a total comeback for him, and he said, I need to go back into dog mushing and have a great purpose in life. And it's an amazing story around this guy, and he ran the Yukon Quest and Iditarod many times and won many times, so definitely worth meeting that guy and talking to him if you ever get a chance. Very approachable guy, and fun to watch in these checkpoints. And the guy on the bottom left there, I don't know if you can see it, is Newton Marshall. He's a Jamaican dog sledder, and maybe you've heard of his story. We all heard probably like the Jamaican bobsled team some years ago, and it's kind of like a similar story there. There was a tour operator in Jamaica, Chaka Cove, and they wanted to put on a project where they could, on one part, take dogs from the streets, like stray dogs, and bring them, supply a home or provide a home for those dogs, and also help young kids in Jamaica to start a career. And this guy became a dog sled guide. I think they had a golf cart or something like that pulled by dogs in Jamaica. And then eventually the whole thing grew and grew, and then they sent a whole bunch of mushers out to different locations all over the world. They had a musher in the UK, they had a musher in the States, and then Newton Marshall came and visited Hans Gard here in Whitehorse, and they trained with him, and they prepared him to run the Yukon Quest, and he ran the Yukon Quest and finished, I think, in pretty good, I think it was the 13th or 15th place, something like that. So he had a really good time, and he's still running dogs every now and then, and he competed in, I think last year, in the Iditarod again. So those were just 4 of these crazy people out there that you can meet if you're involved with the Yukon Quest. And yeah, 4 very interesting characters. And then last but not least, because that's all about the dogs actually, not so much about people and checkpoints and all that kind of stuff. And so I thought we'll end the formal part of this presentation right here, and I would like you to meet some of these dogs, and that's why we brought some today. Okay, just shut this down. No, that's not here. Maybe I'll just bring them up front, and feel free to come and visit them, pet them. And I brought a little bit of dog equipment too, and maybe a hawk. So this dog here is a dog that came to our kennel from Christian Studer, one of the mushers. He ran the Quest some years ago, and then he ran again last year. He's a good friend of ours, and he had her in this team, and then he decided that she's not fast enough anymore for him, so she came to us because we're not very fast enough. And it turned out that she's an amazingly dog. She's not a very big husky. She's an Alaskan husky. Most people in the Yukon Quest and the Iditarod and in other long distance races run Alaskan huskies. She's fairly skinny for an Alaskan husky. It's not that she's not fed well, but she doesn't put on a lot of weight, and fairly short skin, short hair. And then we have a Siberian husky over here. Her name is Maddie. So we have a mixed team of Siberians and Alaskan huskies. Maddie is probably more of the vision when you think of the classic sled dog. She's also fairly small, so we have some other dogs in our yard that are almost twice as big. Like, her brother is quite a bit bigger, and then we have another Siberian husky twice as big as she is. Both of them were in my Yukon Quest 300 team in 2011 and did pretty well. But I had to drop both of them. There was a virus going around, so she got pretty bad diarrhea on the trail, and she had a little injury and part of her head ripped off when we went through some pretty sharp ice. It was cut through the booty, and it was not a major damage, and we talked to the vets. You okay? To the vets in one of the checkpoints, and they said, well, she could continue, but she shouldn't. It would be better for her if you don't. So we dropped her. But both of them amazing sled dogs. And, she actually has epilepsy, and but she's pretty good. She has the heart of a real race dog, and she just wants and goes all the time. So it's pretty nice. Mm-hmm. And then this third dog that we have over here is actually a very young dog. Her name is Rolo. It's a litter entirely inspired by chocolate, right? Like Rolo and Bounty and all those guys. It's a litter of 9 puppies, so a pretty big litter that we got last February. While I was on the quest, working for the quest, these puppies were born, and we'll probably have to deal with all that crap. An entire litter being born on our couch at home. Needless to say, we don't have that couch yet. Yeah, so she's like 7 months old now, not quite. And hopefully one day she's going to be running the Yukon Quest with me. And yeah, awesome dogs. Feel free to come, pick them, pet them. They're all friendly, they're all nice. They won't bite. They will take any food from you have. And I thought I brought a little bit of dog equipment here. And I thought I'd show you how to put on a harness. And we have somebody from the UK who brought some booties today. So maybe we talk a little bit about dog booties and harnesses. Oh, she goes for it. She can actually do a trick. I'll show you.
Yeah.
She's probably one of the only pet dogs. Hey, climb. Did I did? Turn around. Is that awesome? Okay, so yeah, I thought I'd show you a little bit like these harnesses and how to put them on the dog, and if you want, you can try it too. So this is a typical dog harness that we use in this race, and I'll just show you on climb how to put them on. Hey, hey. There you go. I think she's a little focused on something else right now. So this is how a dog wears the harness. What we try to achieve with these harnesses is that the whole pull is kind of distributed around the neck and then the whole chest. Okay, so this is this. Okay, so you can see that, and they have padded lines here on the side, and this is how you attach them to your lines that go on the sled.
Do they, when you get their harness on, do they start to sense like we're going?
Oh yeah,
Training,
oh yeah,
or, you know,
oh yeah, absolutely. We come with a bundle of harnesses around the corner around the cabin, and they go like. And then there's a lot of screaming and barking and a lot of excitement when we start hooking up the dogs. Come here, come.
How long do they stop at every checkpoint?
It depends. There is a few mandatory stops at these checkpoints. For example, when the race starts in Whitehorse, they have to stop at either Rayburn or Carmel, which are the next 2 ones. It's a floating mandatory that you pick which one they want to stop, which is new. I think they established it in 2 years.
So like stop for like an hour?
No,
10 hours?
no. It's a 6, 4 or 6 hour. 4. Yeah, it's a 4-hour this year. And then they continue, and then the next one is Dawson City, 36 hours. And then they give another stop at the very end, like before the finish, is another 8 hours.
When I was at Scroggy Creek, I noticed the board, and I don't remember which musher it was, but he had like, just checked in and checked right out.
Yeah, they can do that in all the other checkpoints, and it's a strategic.
He actually advanced like 2 other
Right.
mushers.
Right, but the thing is still, they still have to rest their dogs somehow, somehow. And sometimes there's checkpoints that are not very favorable for a musher. Sometimes there's checkpoints like Rayburn, which is a good checkpoint, I think, for dogs to sleep in, because the dog yard is a little bit away. It's often busy, but it's a bit away. The dogs can sleep there pretty well. They just set up their mud on coming from Whitehorse. But it's horrible for the mushers.
Oh,
Because there's no place to sleep.
yeah.
And sometimes you see mushers sleeping outside.
Yeah.
They just put a sleeping bag right beside their dog and just sleep outside instead of crowded checkpoint. Carmex is very good for the musher,
But it's not.
but for the dogs it's pretty jammed in there. It's not very fun for the dogs. So, you know, those kind of things might be considered as well. There's a lot of mushers that try to avoid Carmex. They sleep in Rayburn and then they sleep right before. Like sometimes you see them, we have a spot tracker where we can track the mushers now. And you see them, they're 5 miles before Carmex, and they sit there for like 4 hours, 5 hours, in the camp somewhere, and then they just go through. They grab their bag, to the next stretch in the checkpoint, fill up their cooler with water or something like that, and then they're gone. So it depends a lot on how the musher race works. And a very traditional way of running the race was, if you've heard of the 6 on, 6 off strategy. So 6 hours run, 6 hours rest, an equal amount of run and rest time. That was a very classic strategy in races like Yukon and West. But that has changed over time. And there was a crazy run done by Neff, and he ran away from a storm to try to avoid a storm. And he did a 16-hour non-stop run.
Was that going out of Dawson?
That was going out of Dawson.
Yeah, when the other ones got rescued, right?
Yes.
Yeah, overflow.
Yeah.
He ran in overflow.
That was the year after, but yeah, he just ran away from that storm where Hans Gott was caught up.
Right.
No, sorry, it was the same year, but Hans Gott was actually rescued on the summit and ran into overflow. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, these dogs can do way more than people thought some years ago when it was.
Yes. Yeah.
So some other things that I brought down here, to give the dogs a good rest or to protect them from wind on a run, for example, in an open area like the river. We use these jackets, especially on thin-haired dogs like her. Usually we Velcro them on. There's a flap that protects the belly on the bottom. She goes like, what the hell, it's warm enough. So this is a jacket that will protect her from wind, and there's a fleece lining here to keep her warm in the checkpoint while she's sleeping. And then we've talked about booties before. So those are the little thingies. It's not to protect their feet from cold. A lot of people think it's because of the cold. That's not the case. It's more to prevent rubbing and abrasion basically on the feet. And the snow up here when it's that cold, -30, -40, maybe you've seen it, it's like sugar. It's not that compact, nice snow. It's really sugary, extremely harsh crystals, and if they get that between their feet, it's like sand. It's like as if you would run a marathon or something like that with a cup of sand in your running shoes, which is not exactly what we want to do. So that's why we use these booties, and I can show you how you just put them on. What the hell?
It's not that time of year yet.
Yeah, well, she was on a run this morning. So this is how we attach these booties with the Velcro. And yeah, if you want to try it, you can, and see how difficult it is in warm temperatures to attach a booty to this dog. And maybe you can imagine how that feels if you have to do it barehanded in -40, because you can't do it with a glove.
How hard is it, like when you're trying to train them? I'm just thinking about them all tied together, and you have to get them to all start at once, and then when you're done, get them to all stop at once. Do they fall all over each other, or are they yanking each other, or like how much?
Hey, Klein, come here. She probably wants to visit the stuffed animals in the other section. Well, when you start training your dogs, you don't just take 12 dogs or whatever you have that have never run in a team before, and then you put them all together and see what happens, right? They learn a lot from each other. They learn a ton from the other dogs beside them. They learn a lot. And these puppies that we train at the moment, they haven't been in a harness yet. They start probably when they're like 8 months old. But what we do at the moment, we take them on runs when we train the main team, and they run loose. And you see a lot that they just look. What is the team doing? What are they doing here? Yeah, sure. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting to see how dogs learn. Clyde, come here. Come here. So they pick that up by seeing what the adults do. That is a big part of training, in my opinion. And so a lot of these dogs, when they get hooked up the first time, they already see what it means, what it is. They see teams leaving the yard. They run with the team, beside the team, playing and all that stuff. And I think it's
They all start at once and they all.
no, and what we probably got to do when we start training these puppies, we want to probably take 4 or 5 at a time of them, and then include them in a team of 4 or 5 adults that are pretty calm, and you always want to make it fun and calm for them. It doesn't help you if it is a bad experience or something, if it's just craziness in the beginning. So you want to have some calm, experienced sled dogs to train your puppies, and they pick that up, and it's pretty good. When we hook them all up, usually you have a good lead dog like mine. She stands in front of the team and keeps the line tight. She keeps it straight out. But there's a command we call tight, or keep it tight, something like that. Whatever you use as a musher.
Verbally.
Oh yeah,
whistles or something.
I tell her, but she knows anyways. She knows her job. And it's funny, especially with these puppies when we run, and the puppies are loose, and they don't know what's happening. They're all over the place. They try to play with their buddies in the team, and you see these dogs, it's their job, their business. When they run, this is business. I had a run a few days ago, and one of the puppies stood right in front of the trail. And the first dogs just jumped over. They didn't stop. There was no tangle. There was nothing. They just jumped over the puppy and continued. And then the second row of dogs jumped over the puppy. And then by the third row, the puppy was gone. But yeah, so they really know what they're doing. It's quite. They're professional racers. They're athletes. Yeah. Another thing that we use, what sometimes happens over the time of a race, their body structure changes a little bit. It's more muscle. They lose a little bit of body fat, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes the dog. They're like people, if you would go out and run 1,000 miles, you probably have a muscle somewhere that is a little tight, or, and they have the same kind of things. And that can change their gait a little bit. Sometimes, a foot hurts, or a little bit of a wrist issue there, or something like that. It changes their gait. And if the body condition changes a little bit, the gait changes a little bit, a harness might not fit as well anymore as it did in all the training miles. So we put a jacket like this one on, beautiful pink, which protects them from harness rub. So they can have like a bare spot. If the harness doesn't fit properly, you have a little bit of rub. So you might get a sore spot on the skin, or worse would be frostbite. If the fur is gone on that spot, they might be exposed to frostbite. So we try to prevent all these rubbing by putting on a jacket like this, where the harness can't rub through the fur anymore. So.
I noticed some have got leg warmers on.
You saw that. And that's actually not a leg warmer. What it is
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. What it is, it's a very thin nylon that they put over. And what dogs do, or what sometimes happens, that crystal snow, that sugar snow, it gets thrown up from the rear legs and gets thrown onto the front leg. Yeah. And they can develop, and then it sticks to it. And then eventually pulls the hair out. And they call it chicken feet, because it looks like chicken feet eventually. Like the fur goes on the back. It doesn't hurt them, but it's another spot that might get exposed to frostbite. So you want to prevent that. And dogs that are prone, it seems like it has something to do with their gait. Not all the dogs get chicken feet, but certain dogs do get it. And then they try to protect that with these leggings that they put on, these like a little sock or something like that, leg warmer. But it's not a warmer, it's just to prevent the snow from sticking to fur. That's what we use that for. Do you wanna try one of your booties?
They're christened these, aren't they?
Awesome. It's an extra large, so she will usually lose a small, but you can certainly try to put it on. You should try her. And what you could do is, you could stand over her like this. And just a little bit tighter, but not. And then you just grab a foot. And you could, oh yeah, I'll do it. To the top, back. You just pull it
Thank you,
over,
thank you.
grab it, and wrap it around. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold it there, wrap it around. Yeah, you have to do it a little tight.
Oh, yes.
There you go.
Comfy, at least. You've gone to a bigger shoe size now.
Bigfoot on the
You're
line.
now an extra large. They
There
breathe
you
there.
go.
Oh, dear, I think they're just great.
Okay, yeah. Well, again, thank you for coming. Yeah, you're welcome. Guess I probably just started laughing.